Hi everyone, I'm Kimberly Jin, and I'm a sophomore at ABRHS, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion with you all. So I'm pretty sure all of us know what the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge is, as it was huge on Facebook. I believe there's a couple of steps that the campaign needs to take to truly be so successful. Number one, you need a good cause. As we've seen in campaigns of ISIS on social media, we can see the true effect that great organization and strong pushes can have on the impact of social media campaigns. I think a great goal that we should shoot for is education. I feel like we should focus on Khan Academy, and it really needs more funding and more attention, because it's honestly getting to the root of helping to solve poverty, increase capitalism in all over the world, and bring science to a forefront. And it's essentially going to help benefit a lot of people. So thank you all so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to a great group discussion.
The reason why the ALS campaign was so successful is because the videos created more videos. Even if you have a heartfelt campaign and you have all the things that Kimberly mentions, it doesn't matter if it dies out within a couple of weeks. Now, what's our cause? So Kimberly mentions Khan Academy. I think that really Khan Academy doesn't need more money, especially since Bill Gates just gave them a ton of money with his partnership with Southcon. But I think the key issue here is going to be electromagnetic pulse from the sun. All right, so every 100 years or so, the sun releases a solar flare that would destroy all electronic devices all over the Earth. Now, the last time this happened was in 1985, so it didn't matter because we didn't have any electronics. But the Congressional Commission on EMPs, electromagnetic pulse, says that if this happened today, due to societal collapse, we would see 98% of US citizens dead immediately within the first 3 months. This is a really important issue. These findings were backed up by the National Science Foundation, the US Department of Energy, and the US Department of Homeland Security. Fortunately, Bill H-315 is on the table. We can solve this issue with $2 billion. All it takes is to improve our infrastructure for the power grid. The problem is there is no funding whatsoever. The government cannot solve this problem. We need a social campaign to solve this real-life issue. This is going to happen. It's inevitable. I strongly urge that you do EMPs.
Okay, so first of all, I wanted to say congratulations for making it into finals, and also happy holidays, something very important that I have to say. These are the three main reasons that I believe it was successful. One, it requires a commitment. You have to do this, otherwise you have to donate up to $100. Next, it has peer pressure. Even more so, it causes your peers to force you into doing that. And thirdly, it's easy to do. For the second part, then create your own social media campaign. Obviously, we do need to decide on the issue. And personally, I can't think of an issue deserving enough.
So, hello everybody. My name is Peter Andres, and I'm from Severian Rutgers High School, and I look forward to having a great discussion with you all today. I'd like to propose raising money for perhaps AIDS, so I thank you very much, and I look forward to a great discussion.
Hi everyone, my name is Eugene. I'm from Modern High School, and I look forward to having a great discussion with you. So first, addressing the prompt, it talks about success. So let's define what success on social media is. To me, I think success on social media is having a widespread awareness that lasts and is enduring. First of all, it has to be an issue that people care about. They have to feel some kind of emotional connection to it. Now, that emotional connection could be something because they see it in their everyday life, or it could be something that they think is part of something that makes them greater than themselves. Something like the ALS challenge. Even though the disease only affects actually a small percentage of people, they feel like that it is part of, that by taking part in the ALS bucket challenge, they are being part of something that's greater than themselves. And that's, for them, has an emotional connection. Next, there has to be some kind of publicity through significant figures like George W. Bush or Mark Zuckerberg. However, there's another key note that we should consider is that most social media campaigns are started by young people, not old people grandmas who can't tell if the TV is a microwave or a computer. It should, and lastly, it needs to be something that is easy to do and it's catchy. You know, there are songs, for example, when you think about what has been trending, you think about what's been catchy. There are songs that are really catchy, like Happy. It got along really fast, and there's the Rick Roll song. People still remember that because it's really catchy. Thank you, and I'll also have a few discussion.
I think what made the Ice Bucket Challenge so successful is due to 5 big reasons. First of all, it was a non-controversial issue, and also it had an appeal to human intuition. This idea that you want to minimize suffering and you want to stop a disease. And also there was a large amount of celebrity endorsement, which is reason number 4, in order to spread that message even more to their fans. And finally, and most critically, is the timing. It occurred over summer when people had a lot of downtime and were able to try out new things for fun. And by doing so, it was able to get the most amount of interest by allowing people in the middle of their downtime to see a cause to support.
So obviously, we talked a lot about the Ice Bucket Challenge, and that was the thing stated in the prompt. Now, November requires you to grow a mustache, so a very visible commitment, but something that's easy to do. That requires you also to do a video telling them your stories of coming out or how you respond to someone coming out.
Obviously, only 50% of the population, with perhaps a few exceptions here and there, can grow a mustache for the month of November. Scientists disagree about how many, but only like a very, very small percentage of the population can make videos about coming out of the closet about something. Making a video about coming out of the closet can be very difficult for most people who experience that sort of thing, as can growing a mustache. That does require a certain level of commitment. So I think that something as simple as pouring ice water over your head is really easy, and I think that that's one of the things that made it so successful.
I think you make a great point about how people, it needs to be easy, because if we consider November and ALS bucket challenge, and we have used my definition of success, which is widespread awareness. Personally, I've never heard of November. Call me living under a cave, but I haven't. So I think it goes to show that, you know, something that is simple that anyone can do, whether it's your grandmother, even though she might not know the difference between a microwave and TV, can do. That, I think, is going to allow more people to know, because not everyone is going to know someone who is who might be in the closet.
It's a
Oh,
social
no,
media.
certainly. Yeah. Well, I think that. One thing that. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
Actually, Tom, did you have something to say?
I did, yes.
Well,
And I feel like,
Go ahead.
before we start talking about what campaign moves they did, I think that the most prominent thing that they focus on is what were they doing it for? It's apolitical. People don't really have to say, well, it goes against my party lines. I'm going to vote for Republican, so I'm not going to do that, or something like that.
I think another reason why something can be apolitical is that not many people prior to the social media campaign actually knew about the event. For us here in Boston, you know, there's not as much racism going on as it is like in Ferguson. So for issues like these, people aren't really aware of them to begin with.
The reason why the Lou Gehrig campaign was so successful and so important was because prior to the campaign, they got no funding, right? So when we're choosing a disease, right, if we assume we're going to choose a disease, I think we should choose an orphan disease, not Ebola, not AIDS, because those already have massive awareness. Those already have massive funding from governments around the world and organizations.
So that you actually brought up
If I may, I feel like that just moved on to say.
Well, no, I don't, I can try to.
Yeah, sure. Because I remember what I was going to say. Okay, I think that ultimately, when we talk about what makes a social media campaign a success, I think that we first need to recognize there are really two different kinds of social media campaigns. Yeah, and so I think that the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge was interesting because it was almost like a hybrid social media campaign. It was designed to both promote awareness and raise funds at the same time.
A special thing with AIDS is the AIDS quotes that were made to raise awareness for AIDS, which is almost like a social media in
And
itself.
I
in
think,
which
yeah,
it's
so
spread
like,
from person
the
to
days,
person.
they were awesome, right?
Yeah.
And that made it a social issue, and it's still a social issue today.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, like, insofar as right now, everyone knows about the problem of AIDS, government's already spending lots of money on AIDS research.
Yeah, and that's
We
why-
probably shouldn't spend all our attention on AIDS versus the thousands of other diseases that people actually suffer from that aren't getting it.
Well, the reason why I brought that example up is because at that time, AIDS was considered an orphan disease,
Oh, so-
despite how.
So we're gonna pick a
widespread
disease
it was.
like AIDS. So
Yeah,
all
I'm
right.
saying that's possible success of the ALS campaigns.
I think Kim has
I
something to
think
say.
that's a little moving into the second topic, because in our introductions, we discussed a lot of those, like what disease or what topic we're gonna focus on in the second part. So I'm just gonna go back to something Peter said a long time ago. I'm sorry for jumping around, I'm just trying to stick to the like schedule of us moving through different steps of what makes a social media activism campaign successful key. Because even with a good cause, unless people are able to kind of like work together and to have like a cohesive plan of how to send things out.
I think that's I think you should be careful about how you define organization. Is it organization at the very beginning, or organization that picks up as time moves on?
Especially
because
since-
with something like ALS, organization was done very much beforehand. But with something like Ferguson,
Wait,
no,
the organization
actually,
took
yeah.
place
Could you
as
just
time continued to go on. It wasn't like at the very beginning, you know, before Mike Brown was shot, people were like, oh, let's get ready to have hashtag Black Lives Matter to go up. it was something that kind of felt up. So I think organization, it depends on how you define organization.
I feel like the way that Kim was trying to define organization in this case was more so towards the spreadability. Like, how were they going to continue this campaign?
Yeah.
What's going to contribute to this longevity and make it really popular?
A couple of us mentioned something that wasn't mentioned by all of us, in which the power of celebrity in this case. Now, obviously, one of the big things with the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge is how many celebrities did it. I gave the example of Kermit and George W. Bush.
Well, one thing that I feel about that though is that oftentimes by the time celebrities get on board, these campaigns have already sort of like reached their peak. Like by the time George Bush did it, the campaign was already sort of starting to wind down a bit. So I feel like oftentimes celebrities start doing it because their fans are doing it and they know that it'll get them more attention. But so I feel like oftentimes celebrity endorsements come sort of late in the game. And while they may encourage some people to start joining, I don't really think that it's a major contributing factor.
Pete. I can't really remember the names. I think that's a really great point because that's why I want to bring back to something that I said in my opening statement, which is young people. You know, you can't have your grandmother going on social media. You know, that's just, the reality is that the majority of people who are on Facebook all the time are young people. So I think that is going to be something that's very critical for us to realize.
Right, so basically, it's something that
We
goes to the young.
do need to take into account the older generation and the fact that
Yeah.
there's an app.
Yeah, and I think in fact
If I could just quickly go
And we
off
have
of.
Congo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about young people, grandmas, teenagers, etc. Ultimately, what makes it appeal to them in the first place is that this activity is fun. So it kind of devolves back into that main reason that it has to be something engaging with the people, it's got to be something easy for them to do, and it's something that they enjoy doing. There is an element of fun in doing that activity. Do you agree on that?
I think we can
I
all
actually don't agree.
And actually, we're,
You don't agree it should be fun?
Alright, so, no, I disagree. So, pretty much what we've all been doing here is we've been coming up with a lot of necessary conditions, right? You're saying this campaign will not work unless we have X, Y, Z. I think that's reasonable. But I don't support the leap where it says if you have X, Y, Z, it will succeed, right? The whole concept of a viral video is that we cannot predict what's going to be a viral success and what's not going to be. Like, I think one thing we never addressed, the Ice Bucket Challenge was created by accident. One guy came up with this random idea, sent a challenge to his friend, and that was the viral success. This wasn't planned, it wasn't organized. Nobody got together in a group discussion and came up with a list of things to do. Nobody did that, it was just a random idea. So the very concept that we can come up with a list of things and just check, and it'll be success, I think that's flawed.
No, sure, it's a bad concept.
The prompt asks like what can
But
make
what
social
we
media.
do from this element of serendipity is.
No, but I'm just saying you can't do anything. It's going to be random people coming up with random ideas. That's how we're going
But
to
what you
succeed.
said, that's
addressing
basically what the
the
prompt is
prompt-
asking us to come up with.
And I'm saying our answer should be the prompt is flawed.
Well,
That's
So you're
your
trying to
answer.
run a T-shell on the.
I don't think we can necessarily do
the prompt-
that.
the prompt is not-
Guys, we're like reaching the end of our first.
Yes,
15
yeah, if I
minutes.
may just quickly, the prompt isn't asking what, like what elements can you sort of like bring together to make a successful campaign? It's just asking what makes a campaign successful, and I think that's what we're trying to identify.
No, you're saying successful campaigns have certain properties. You're not saying
Yes.
that those properties
That
guarantee
being
success.
that being said.
We're not, we never
Hold on.
said that
Yeah,
they
please,
guarantee
please.
success.
If
All
I
we're
may-
saying is that
if
these
I may just say
properties
something
have
real
allowed
quick.
success in these campaigns.
If I may say something real quick, like just to put aside this discussion here, this bit of controversy, do we agree that the previously discussed elements are contributing to the success of the ALS?
I agree, it's
So in
necessary,
that
but
case,
not sufficient.
can we, I understand, but can we identify those that are necessary first, before we regard?
No, I
what
think
is
we all agree with they are. It's gotta be-
and one
That would be
more
time.
Okay.
So, the first 15 minutes have elapsed. I would like to ask the audience that if you have a conversation to have with somebody who's sitting next to you, if you have to leave the room, if you have to do texting, please do that in the hallway and exit now, so that we don't have to further interrupt our competitors. Okay? Thanks. Petition will begin now.
So obviously, oh, you can go, Tom. I'll start with the first one.
All right, thank you. So I feel like the first thing we have to address, of course, is what should this be about?
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like we have a general consensus that it should be either on education or it should be on disease research. Do we agree on that?
I don't think that that's necessarily true because I think, sorry, I think Seth bring up a great point that it needs to be something that people might not be aware of before because with something like AIDS, people are already kind of aware that this issue exists.
There's a second issue, right? It's not just social awareness, it's also research awareness, right? Research companies are already giving money, like cold hard cash, to AIDS, to Ebola, we don't actually need to give more money to them. They've got
Well,
enough.
You know,
exactly. So that's why I would like to bring up the
I-
point,
well,
is that if I could finish my point before, Steph continues, I'm sorry. Thank you for adding on to what I said earlier. I think that one thing that we could really address that people might have not known about is the fact that how we are spending money on Africa, how we feel Africa as a continent that needs to be safe. When I was in South Africa this summer, I realized that South Africa has a lot of potential to grow economically. So one of the things that I feel like we should kind of address is the fact that how we as a Western nation are contributing to charity organizations.
But
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
do you mind if I
Oh,
speak? In contrast to what you're all saying, I don't believe that in order to have a successful social media campaign, that the cause needs to be something that isn't well known. There can, I mean, if I asked everyone in this room, how many of us have donated to education, the amount would probably still be pretty small. There can easily be a surge of awareness and a surge of donations for a cause that's already well known and that we can still improve upon.
But it's also well funded. Khan Academy already has Bill Gates behind them. If they need any extra billions, they can just ask their
And on
friends.
top of that, with
Listen,
the,
part of it's
well,
not just funding, part of it's awareness.
But why does it matter as long as Khan has money, right?
Well, I'm
Like,
not
if he's
just
got enough
arguing
cash to
that-
make his videos, it
I'm
doesn't
not-
really matter whether people
I'm
know
not-
his
well,
videos.
certainly it doesn't matter.
Excuse me, could you
I'm not
finish one?
arguing that we should focus on Khan Academy, I'm just saying that like in general, we shouldn't just focus upon things that aren't well known because there's still, a lot of these well-known issues are well known for a reason and there's still a lot of improvement we can make. So we just shouldn't limit our discussion just to this. I'm not saying-
Yeah,
Well,
actually,
the thing
if I may just contribute some here, I definitely agree with your point. While I feel like AIDS is to disease research what the giant panda is to saving endangered species, right? Everybody knows the giant, well, everybody knows what pandas look like, everybody knows what they are, and they're on the face of every single fundraiser for endangered animals ever in existence, right? And so, a lot of people, I don't know, like up until a few years ago, I didn't even realize that the giant pandas were still endangered. I didn't even realize that it was still an issue, but the fact is, despite all the money that's raised, there's still a significant problem that's there. So if you look at something like AIDS research, for instance, not as much money is being given towards AIDS research as a lot of people like to think. And even Ebola, for instance, it's mostly governments that are doing research, and even then they don't have a lot of money for it. So I think that those are potentially two good things that could potentially morph into social media campaigns.
We don't necessarily have to contribute money to it. You know, if you want to try to raise money, all you could do is go up to Bill Gates and ask him $10,000 or $20,000 or etc. amount, but that wouldn't have necessarily created success because success is about being widespread in the social. That's what social media success has always been about. With movements like Ferguson or Ira Garner and things like that, nobody was contributing money. Nobody was contributing, well, some people might have been contributing money, but the general cause wasn't about contributing money. So to counter Steph's point about how, you know, CAD already has a lot of money. Well, education doesn't really necessarily gain the attention that it
Like,
deserves.
where are you gonna give the money? Are you gonna give it to the government so they can spend it on schools?
I'm not saying that,
Are you gonna give it to
I'm not talking about money, I'm saying that
Guys, I
success
think
is
we're
not
really
about money.
focusing a little bit too much on just singular issues. I think, at least for now, we should really focus on the broad part of it, at least in creating a social
Yeah.
media campaign, what should
Yeah.
we do?
Yeah, let's
So,
just assume that we can agree on issue, we can call it issue X. How do we promote issue X? What can we do?
All right, so,
Can I-
oh yeah, go ahead. Oh, all right. So the first thing to do is take care of the time. Okay? Like, as I said in the introduction, and unfortunately I didn't have time to say in the first half, you've got to make sure that it comes at a time when it's convenient for people to do so. So possibly not in the middle of a world war or something like that. And also, people can actively participate. So like, usually over the summer when kids are out of school and that they have a bunch of free time. So to target that period that this campaign will take place in is critical, and I'm advocating for it over the summer. Do you guys agree with this? Maybe like starting at near the end of school to start getting kids in school, spreading the
Yeah,
uh,
set a date,
and then-
July 19th.
Okay, so yeah,
Sure,
so
why not?
that would
July
be one
19th.
thing that would be
At
necessary
5
for
o'clock
our
PM.
campaign.
Well, no,
Sorry,
early,
mark it down.
it's gotta be early.
2 o'clock PM. Right when people get home from work, you know.
Eastern Standard Time.
So I'll just put down mid-spring, what was the
No,
exact time?
June, July 19th.
I think
Oh,
actually,
okay.
Actually, no, I know it's moved to June. So that was, it starts during school. And like,
Yeah, so I mean,
make it
this
before
is what I'm talking about.
so-
You can't plan a viral campaign.
Sure.
It looks really silly. Right now, we're doing it because that's not how viral campaigns start.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you on
That's
that.
organic.
No.
Sure, it may look silly, a bunch of people in suits talking about how to create this viral campaign, but isn't it a lot better than just you walking around looking up at the sky hoping for
I think we should just
inspiration?
try doing like thousands of viral campaigns.
Well,
and
the
a lot
thing
of
is,
people
we
fail,
only have
maybe
so
one-
much resources, we can't just keep on spreading it here and there,
We
hoping
don't want-
something.
And to an extent, Steph, I agree with you. Sorry.
Sorry, no, you can go ahead.
Okay, to an extent, Steph, I agree with you, but you have to realize that if you look at the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, although it wasn't completely planned, at least in scope, there was something in which they didn't want it to
It
become a
was,
social
it was
media
one guy,
event.
like dumping a bucket of water in his head, because he
It
had one
started off
friend.
by
No, actually, no, it
I think,
was,
I think
Kim
Kim
has
has
something
something
to
to
say.
say.
In the example of the ALS, Ice Bucket Challenge, it may be true that it started as more like a trend. But in a lot of other cases that we look at of successful social media campaigns, there is some planning. There's a group of people who want to spread it, like have the intention of spreading it. So I feel like we can't just look at that one example. Also, another thing that I want to address, building off of Eugene and Josh, is the issue of desensitization. If we inundate the social medias with viral videos, people won't know what to do, and they'll keep on going to different things, and they'll become desensitized to the impact that these can actually have on social media campaigns. And I feel like that's a really important point that we have to look at.
Actually,
Yeah,
I
you
do
can
like
make a point, but
if I just ask a clarifying question. What exactly do you mean by desensitization? Are you saying that when we post so many videos at once, people don't care, or
I mean,
are you
if
saying that if
someone
it's on so many
suggested
different
earlier that we have lots of viral videos and hope we hit a jackpot with one.
Variety.
Well,
I
I
was
don't
gonna
think
bring
that
up another
necessarily
point
means
that I was gonna say. I wanted to go back to what you were talking about in terms of timing, because a while ago I saw a video about, I don't know if you guys heard about it, it's like a viral video that went viral because the girl actually planned it. She said that the video is called like The Girl Dancing, and one of the things that she explained in her planning of it was that she released the video on a Monday or Tuesday when people were coming back from work. So I think that goes back to something that you were talking about, Kim, earlier, in that social media success requires to involve everyone, not just you, and I think timing it that way is very critical, because at that time we can involve people like adults that are working as well as youth that are going to school.
certainly, I mean, I think we all agree that it has to be inclusive. Now, going back kind of what Peter said, or what Peter was posing, I don't necessarily think that it has to be a challenge. All I think it really has to do is it has to require a commitment. For example, November requires men to wear mustaches. The It's Get Better campaign requires you to make a very emotional video, just to throw a few examples out there.
I would actually disagree with that point, although it would be best if it wasn't so much of a challenge. But the idea is that having that idea of a challenge, this idea of friendly competition, is what helps spread this message. Sure, you may grow a mustache, but does that tell someone right away, hey, you should grow a mustache too? There's no incentive for others to do so as well. It's more based on self-drive in that case. And by having that challenge, we allow for that tiny bit of motivation, maybe trying to fuel that egoism, if you will, and being able to allow individuals to spread that message even more so than before. So I believe, yes, a challenge is necessary.
Okay, I get your criticism, but one of the I just kind of have a hard time agreeing with it, partly because it does kind of play to that altruistic nature in your egotism. I mean, if you really look at it, humbleness is really people just trying to be proud that they are humble.
Yeah.
That's true, but like that's a factor that we.
Yeah, that's
Ben Franklin
well,
said.
I think we have like
So,
2.5
I
minutes.
think one more
So if we can
point.
try
Now I
to
want to
quickly
make
wrap
a
this
point.
up. You want to go first?
Thank you. I feel like essentially what Josh and Tom are getting at, you guys are sort of clashing opinions, but I feel like your opinions aren't that different. I feel like while definitely a challenge helps because, as it says, it promotes that kind of competitive spirit, that sense of fun, it definitely isn't the only way, because Josh is kind of talking about that emotional appeal. And I feel like both of them are really important. So instead of saying one is like more necessary or better than the other, we should just compromise and say that they're both really useful.
Yeah,
Actually,
I think and then I want to bring another
offer
point
a
that
solution?
something that we haven't really talked about. Since we
only
seem to
have-
have
we have-
consensus, I
we
want
have-
to bring
we
up a
have 2
point
minutes.
that we haven't really come up with, which is the
Okay.
issue that we want to tackle.
Right, I was actually going to touch upon that. So
Yeah.
basically, it's clear that we're not going to hit a consensus on what the issue is, but
Yeah.
we have three defining factors essentially. First off, it has to be apolitical, right?
Yes.
We agree on that?
Yes.
The second part is it cannot be a controversial issue. So it can't be like, say, Israel-Palestinian belief or something
Yeah,
like that.
obviously.
And the third part is that it has to be something that appeals to our purpose of humanitarianism. So that would be the emotional response part.
Certainly.
Yeah, the altruism, if you will. Now the second part is when we talk about what to do, I still think we should do the challenge. Now, tying it to the altruism, we also have some friendly competition, making it fun for individuals to be participating in this event.
I think Kimberly's point is really clear here when she talked about desensitization, right? You can't replicate something someone has already done. If you try to do a challenge very similar to ALS, people are going to say, hey, that's just the ALS challenge rebranded, right? They're not going to buy into it. This is the fundamental problem with trying to create our own social media campaign. Desensitization.
All right, so first off, I'd like to congratulate everyone on making it to finals, and this was a pretty in-depth and interesting finals format, if I do say so myself. So now moving into the actual discussion, I feel like that we've reached a general consensus on that what factors contributes to making a online social media campaign successful. And those factors were, first off, the theme, the focus of that campaign. It has to be non-controversial, apolitical, and also it has to appeal to our roots of humanitarianism, to allow our altruism to take the better part of us and make us actually to participate. The second part is that the activity itself that draws people into the campaign. It has to be something simple to do, and also it has to be something that is presented as a challenge or something fun. So therefore, not only are people willing to do it in the first place, but they're also able to pull others into the entire thing through the idea of friendly competition. And then the other major point that I was stressing as well is that the timing of it had to be perfect. And that it had, the ALS challenge, for example, occurred during the summer where people had time to actually participate, and therefore it allowed it to blow up hugely on social media. Now, moving on to the second part, we had a bit more disagreement, but there were some key factors that we identified. We decided roughly around the the end of the school year, right before finals, when there's the greatest amount of student interaction going on, and it's released sometime in the early afternoon, so that way students, the moment they get home, they can start seeing this blowing up on the internet and then start taking more action, and then over the summer, make it even greater than it was before. So once again, thank you all for a great round, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you all for a very lively discussion. People have to kind of care about the issue. It has to be something that's larger, that is universal, no matter if you're young or old. And another thing too that we have talked about is the timing. We don't want it to be timed when people are it's midnight and you're all trying to finish your paper that's due tomorrow morning. Thank you, and I hope you all have a best of luck and Happy New Year.
All right, so I'd like to thank you all for a very lively and enjoyable discussion after a day of rounds in which everyone seemed to come to a consensus rather quickly. I suppose a very contentious final round would be virtually inevitable, so I thank you all very much. Well, personally, I feel that it would need to be some kind of challenge that could draw in other people. Obviously not, say, a copy of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, but something inventive and something interesting and perhaps a bit new. We all know that the internet loves challenge, it loves recreating things in a viral way, and I think that that still has the potential to be very successful. So I thank you all for a very great discussion, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
All right, so I think we all agree that we need a cause that's apolitical, simple, heartfelt. Everyone said that, everyone agrees. Now, the one thing everyone's missing is the fact that this cause needs to be an unknown cause. Remember, the reason why ALS was so powerful is because it was an orphan disease. It didn't have funding before, it didn't have awareness before. That's why we need to pick something that's going to be, that no one knows about, right? So we need to be humble. We can only, maximum, make $18 million here, right? That's what the ALS challenge did. $18 million going to the billions already being spent on AIDS and Ebola, that's a drop in the bucket. It's not going to do anything. Pick a disease, something like celiac, which affects 100 million Americans every year but doesn't have very much funding. Pick something special that no one knows about. That's what we should be picking. Pick an unknown cause, not something that's well known that already has funding. But the second issue is, how should we plan this campaign? And my answer, again, is that we shouldn't even try, and there are two reasons. First, the fundamental unpredictability of the internet. The whole idea of viral videos, you cannot predict what's going viral. Companies spend billions every year on their marketing campaigns trying to find viral videos, and they fail year after year because the internet is not predictable. We don't know enough about psychology. But the second issue, and this is the most important part, as Kimberly brings up, desensitization is going to be key. Remember, the idea of desensitization means when you do a campaign, the next time you do it, it's going to be less effective, right? Law of diminishing returns. Because people don't only like original things. What implications does that have? That means that we literally cannot look to the past in order to drive our decisions about the future, right? The whole idea of looking to the ALS campaign in order to create a new campaign is completely, it's not intelligible. Because insensitivity occurs. If you do anything like the ALS campaign, people are going to call you out for it. They're going to say, hey, this is a ripoff. I'm not going to buy into this. This isn't new. You cannot look back to the past in order to make decisions about the future in the context of social media. That's just a simple fact. The whole idea of looking at past to learn lessons, not intelligible. So we should let random people try certain things and hopefully they succeed. We shouldn't try to get together in a room of 6 people and say we're going to do it on July 19th to make a decision.
Alright, so I'd like to thank you all for being here for the final round. I'd like to thank the audience for watching and kind of like going through this round with us. And I thank the judges for listening. So I feel like everyone summed up the consensuses that we reached in the first part of the prompt really well. But I feel like there are two things that I need to touch back upon. One of them is the importance of organization. Well, I'm not talking about how we have to plan out everything beforehand, because like Zach mentioned, the internet's really unpredictable, but there is still criteria that's needed for anything to take off in the first place, such as accessibility and its ability for fun and emotional connect. Those are all part of the organization that begins a social media campaign. And secondly, the fact that it's not just limited to things that are unknown, because as I said earlier, there's a desensitization to things like education and environmental protection, where people believe that lots of funds are going to it, but we can still make a better effort to improve it because there's still problems. There should be no limit to what problems that we tackle because they all need to be addressed in the end. So moving on to the second part of the issue, I feel like there are two consensuses we really like. One of them was proposed by Tom, about timing and how important that plays a part in, and also the ability that everyone needs to be able to take part. I responded to Eugene about it when he said that youth was the most important, but the fact is in society, every different age group and every different ethnicity balances out the maybe powers and flaws of each other, and we need to address everyone in order to have a cohesive, successful social media campaign. So in the end, I thought this was a great group discussion, albeit a little heated, but thank you all very much for being here.